Welcome to Securing the Spark, the official podcast of the CyberForce program, led by the Department of Energy's Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, known as DOE CSER, where we discuss cybersecurity, workforce development, and how the next generation is securing our nation's energy. I'm your host, Steph, and with me are my co-hosts, Amanda and Eddie. In this episode, we speak with two university mentors who have guided student teams through the Department of Energy's CyberForce competition, Dr. Tom Neterost from the University of Central Florida and Dr. Andy Burns from the University of Northern Iowa. In this podcast, you'll hear Tom and Andy reference their universities as UCF and UNI. We talk about key tactics behind effective mentorship, from securing team funding and recruiting top talent to developing competition strategies and reflecting on lessons learned as mentors. Whether you're a current mentor or simply curious about what mentor roles are, this episode is for you.
Thank you both for being with us today. I wanted to start with just a brief introduction of yourselves for our listeners.
So my name is Andy Burns. I'm an associate professor of computer science at the University of Northern Iowa. I actually did my PhD research on distributed algorithms. So security is kind of a self-taught thing for me that I picked up partially through working with our student group here at the University of Northern Iowa. I wanted to bring a team. I think when I first started here at UNI, there was a different mentor for the cybersecurity team, and then he moved on to bigger and better things, but they kind of recruited me to fill in his absence. And so we've been, I think, to every Argonne competition but one. There's the one that still haunts me that we didn't get to. It's been a great opportunity. It's close for us. So we're located in the Midwest. And so it's a, small drive for us to get to the competition. And we just kind of got involved and have been going ever since.
My name's Tom Neterost, and I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Central Florida. We're outside, just on the east side of Orlando, Florida. I have been here 13 years, and I teach I am a computer science instructor, but teach primarily information technology and cybersecurity courses. Similar to Andy, I had no background in cybersecurity either. Once we got students that wanted to compete on the team, I ended up being the coach for the team and a mentor for our cyber club. So that was my introduction to cybersecurity. And we're a lot farther away than Andy is. So we're in Orlando. So it's a plane ride for us to get up to the Chicago area, which makes it a fun trip for the students to go and compete. And very similarly, we've only missed one of the CyberForces, the very first one. I knew about it, but there's also a conflict with the meeting date for that first year. But we've been in every CyberForce since the very first one.
I kind of wanted to touch on a point that both of you brought up, because one of the things that we've noticed with the competition is when we are recruiting, we're talking to a lot of mentors, a lot of universities. One of the things that always comes up is the obstacles of finance. Like Andy, you said, like you're a car ride away, but Tom, you got to get on a plane. So one of the things that we're always finding with the mentors is like if you can share some of those strategies that you've used throughout the years to secure funding and travel for your teams to come to the competition.
So I've been, like I said, we're pretty lucky to be within a car ride 4 or 5 hours away. We also have our cybersecurity team is a officially recognized student group on campus here. And so they actually have a couple of funding sources that they can get to that they wouldn't if they were just through like class. So we have student government has money that they will give to student groups if they're going for things that, you have to have a tryout to get to and things that will help publicize the University of Northern Iowa. And so, that CyberForce fits those really well. And so they've usually generously given us some money. And then we also have another fund, which is the Intercollegiate Athletics Fund, I believe is the name of it, where it's for like student groups that are participating in competitions and stuff to get some cash for. So we definitely find a lot of our funding here on campus because it is small enough. And the CyberForce competition is definitely reasonable. I mean, like it's, the competition itself is free. I like that we go to a convention center, and then like the hotel part, they don't give us a hard time because it's like, no, this is the official hotel we stay in. They don't have to try to find cheaper options for us or anything like that. And so we're incredibly lucky that we can do the entire thing through, student government funds and the IAF. But yeah, all on campus funding for us for this competition.
Well, I would say the same thing. For CyberForce, so our club existed about 4 years before the first CyberForce. So let me first talk to how we got any money at all. Very similar to Andy, in our very first year of organizing the club and doing any kind of competition that involved money, even if it was just a registration fee, I was told zero budget. And I did convince, one of the competitions had a $300 team entrance fee. I did convince our department to give me at least $300 for it. But my team did really well and involved advancing to the next level, which meant taking a trip someplace. Very similar to Andy, we were able to go to student government. However, I don't think they're as generous as Northern Iowa's. They have restrictions on what they'll pay for. They'll pay for 50% of certain things and zero for anything else. For instance, they would pay 50% of the airfare. They won't give us any money to bring students to and from the airport. If we drove someplace, they would not pay for personal mileage, but they would pay half of like renting a bus or something like that. So it was very tricky getting started. By the time CyberForce came around, I said we were 4 years old, and because we'd done fairly well in competitions, our school was able to get something called the IT Performance Grant from the state, which provided funding for several years. Actually, I think we had 3 years of funding out of that, where we were able to charge all our travel expenses to it. So that was a state initiative to improve the experience for information technology majors by sending them to competitions or conferences. Thank goodness my department chair at the time, my dean, felt it was a much beneficial use to send students to compete as to just send them to some random conference someplace. So that's what we did for the next couple of years. And by that time, we started having alumni that were contributing a little bit. We also were able to get some local companies to sponsor and a couple national ones to give us X number of dollars as a donation, which all went into our travel fund. So right now, I spend about $65,000 a year on our team travel and our uniforms. So, and that includes the food that the students get while we're traveling, hotels, airfare, and stuff like that. I hope it continues, but again, it's again from donations that are made to the club by sponsor companies as well as alumni. And fortunately, I'm able to partner with the UCF Foundation. So they're always trying to find other sponsors for us as people are interested in partnering with the university, especially if it's related to cyber. One of the talks that they have with them is, are they interested in sponsoring our cyber team to help them get to competitions? So that's kind of where our funding comes from right now.
Yeah, and that's to your point you bring there, Tom. So one of the things that we're always trying to do is we're always trying to help kind of like the newer universities. Have you seen any success for any other different types of sponsors, or what has worked for the school?
It's a variety of sponsors that we had. I mean, I can't say it's any one industry. We had a very large law firm that gave us a lot of money to basically to use for our club, which goes either to competition travel or hosting events here on campus. And our club is able to raise some money that way, which also goes into helping with travel. For instance, you're offering some type of benefit back to a sponsoring company by either coming to recruit on campus and speaking to your cybersecurity students in a club meeting, for instance, or they may give a technical presentation. We have gone out for day on the job at a company. And again, those companies are willing to not only make that happen, but they're also willing to put a little money behind it, which helps us travel to competition. So there's an investment firm that also has donated, a local cybersecurity company. Actually, we've got a couple cybersecurity companies across the state that now donate every year a couple $1,000s. So that it all adds up.
And Andy, to your point, when you said since you go mostly through the university, if you were to share kind of like strategies on how to approach the university, because that's sometimes kind of the difficulty too, is like, how do you make that initial conversation with the university and how to get them to see the value and see the program? Like what has worked for your, for you during these years trying to get students?
I think, a big part has been talking with existing student groups that are not tech related, but we have some that have been around for quite some time, and you see like our business college, for instance, has a strong competition teams for like the advertisements, and so we can talk with them and say, where do you get your funding from? That's how we kind of found the IAF, student government, same kind of deal. So just talking with other places on campus, because there's almost likely that, or it's pretty likely that almost every campus is going to have some teams, some academic teams that can go out there, and so finding out what they've done has been super helpful. And then the publicity is great to be able to come back to like the student government and say, look here, we appeared on in LinkedIn as a post. I know we were waiting for this year's CyberForce, waiting for the University of Northern Iowa, you've been accepted post, so we could share that. So it's nice when you see those kinds of things pay off, and student government appreciates it. The university appreciates getting our name out there, and it's just been pretty much find out what others on campus are doing and kind of copy them for the moment.
I would say that was also the same thing that happened here. I do remember where we got some of the sponsors from was at an Orlando B-Sides security conference, and there's B-Side conferences held all over the country. If you go to them, you get a shirt, and on the back of it was about 35 or so sponsoring companies, and most of them were in the Central Florida area. So if we didn't know anybody there, we still did cold calls through an email, professional email, and we got some bites on that, and some people willing to sponsor. And sometimes it was only $100 up front, but if they started following the team and see that we were doing well, and it's turned into $1,000 or $2,000 a year that we get from them. But I mean, this is kind of how we got started as well, as we just saw names of companies we recognized. I mean, they're smaller local firms, but they were willing to get involved as well. So use sources like that, the local conferences as well, to find companies that would possibly sponsor your team.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I made a note of it to check back in, actually. I just got notice from B-Sides here in Des Moines, and I'm like, wait, that's brilliant. I'm going to, take a note. So
I was going to say, I think, I think everyone does that at some point. You kind of see like, oh, who sponsored who somewhere else, and, how do I find a contact there? We try to figure out, how do we help schools realize the benefit for them? For you guys as mentors, like, how do I help a mentor realize for their higher ups, like, how does this benefit them to either get money from the school, and or how do I help them figure out from the local companies, like a quid pro quo, like help us get there, but in the end, how can it benefit that company, whether that's there's an internship opportunity, a job, maybe like local companies are probably would be willing to help, but it's always that, how do I awkwardly like knock on that door and ask? And that's always the hard part to start the conversation, especially when you potentially have a lot of universities in a nearby situation. You have a very good point, Tom, of, some of these names that you see donate all the time or sponsor, sometimes showing them, here's where it can make a really big impact. Like, why not ask them and show them?
And we've been successful as from our college as well, just being much more supportive. When we first started a cyber club, everybody called it Hack at ECF, and the university was not happy with that name at all. They thought they were going to be malicious and doing all kinds of damaging things. But as the team competed in competitions and started winning, and then phones started ringing from other companies into the dean's office, the support has totally changed. So now we're able to use labs, let's say after hours, to use the computers in there and get a lot of the decommissioned servers and things like that from departments that are relatively new, but they're just out of warranty. We're able to use those. So that's another way that we get computers and or server supplies.
You brought a point too, for both of you did. So when you come and you compete, do you like, does your team have some type of like social media following? Because Tom, you had mentioned that, the company started following the team. So like, were you guys providing information to the team like, hey, look, we participated, we did this? Like Andy, when you go to the university after you compete, do you show the university like photographs of the team there, like to keep that following and that momentum going, or what kind of strategies you guys use to kind of keep the university and the sponsors kind of following the team and up to date?
So we definitely do like a post-trip report with them. So the sponsors get to see like, here's what we learned, here's how we placed. I take a few pictures, and I think we have a social media account, but I do not know how to get into it. So that would be we're lucky enough right now to have a student president who does a really good job. She keeps everything in order, and my role is pretty minimal. I think she maintains our social media accounts. But yeah, we definitely like for this the two organizations on campus send them. One of them requires a report afterwards. The student government doesn't, but it's I always show up and tell them like, hey, thanks for your donation. This is what we did with it. This is the publicity that we got with you and I. So it's one case required, one case optional. But yeah, I always give some sort of a post-trip report, post-competition report for them.
I'd say here at UCF, unfortunately, don't have to do that with a report, but I do take pictures of that competition, and I'm always sending them to people at the university, both from our dean, the chair, and within our college, we have a communications person who puts out tweets based on the college, and if it's a really big competition like CyberForce, they'll involve the university's media staff as well to put out a university announcement, not just a department announcement. I additionally post on my own LinkedIn because I've had a lot of connections over the years already that do follow that we've won. And I do ask the students, but normally I will tag all the students that were at that competition as well. And that's turned out to be a great source for potential jobs for them as well. People are seeing that they won, and here's my list of the 6 students or 8 students that were on the team. And since they're linked there, they'll hit their LinkedIn, and someone who has a job for them or a potential job for them will contact them directly. So that has worked out really, really well for us. Also, our student club, I'll copy them as well, and they'll put it out on their newsletter, and they have their own account that they use social media. I think they have pretty much everything from Instagram. I don't think they're using Facebook anymore, but they're on X and some of the other ones. So they put out an announcement as well.
I was going to say, I think social's been a great opportunity for universities and individuals to highlight whether you win or whether you participate, just like the benefit of being there, because I think there's several benefits to CyberForce in particular, but that's why even whether it comes directly from the CyberForce social, I think the 3 of us on this call, Steph, Eddie, and I, try really hard, even post-event, whenever we see a student or a professor post photos, and they ideally tag CyberForce in it, we try to then repost or reshare it, so that, again, like it goes out to the broader audience, to your point, Tom, so that someone who maybe isn't linked to them or knows them, it just adds that like one more step removed to see, again, understand the program, understand the competition, and then see who else is there, because, oh, I didn't know Andy went there. And then that's one more ping because it didn't, connect 2 and 2 together at one point in time. So I agree. I think social is great. I wish we put up tons more, but the day goes by so fast in the first place. So by the time it starts, it's over with. It feels like in, a blink of an eye. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute and ask about the team makeup and your team dynamic. So some of you may say, like, I don't necessarily make my team, but maybe you have some insights into how your teams are made. So how important is it to you to think of the mix of skills on the team in order for it to, succeed overall? And then are there any certain roles or types of skills that you try to prioritize or suggest the team prioritize when they are making and covering things for the competition now that you've both been there several years?
I need to give a slight bit of background to how our team gets formed. We do have a cybersecurity club at school, and because we're a very large university, we had over almost 500 students in it this year. It's like 480 some students signed up. Not that many want to do competitions, but way too many do want to do the competitions that I can possibly ever send to events like CyberForce. So what we've decided is the club does cyber competitions that are entirely inclusive, meaning there is no limit to the number of students that can compete in the clubs, the cyber clubs competitions. With a separate group, but very well linked to the club, is a college-sponsored cybersecurity competition team, or C3 team. On paper and in organization, they are two separate organizations, but every student that's on that competitive, our cybersecurity competition team is a member of the club as well. So the competition team is the one that I actually pick the people that are on that team, and we typically have somewhere between 20 and 25 or so students a year that we select for that team. Of that team, my job as coach basically is to make the rosters for each of the competitions we go to, and knowing what skill sets students have kind of dictates who goes on what trips to what competitions. So let's get back to CyberForce. Yes, I actually make the decisions for who goes on our teams, and we have so much interest in CyberForce. You have to be there's 6 person per team, so you have to be one of the lucky 12. And what I'm looking for is, I don't want to give my secret sauce away, but basically you need to be a good network or system admin experience. You're going to have some experience in Windows and some experience in Linux. And then you also, to do the anomalies in the competition, a lot of those resemble the challenges that you'd see in a CTF competition. So I'm also looking at people who excel in CTF competitions to put on the team. I think I've been fairly successful in finding the right mix of people to put on the team. The other thing is since we do have 2, I kind of have a senior team and a junior team, and it's not necessarily by years in school, it's by years doing CyberForce. And kind of plan for continuity as people graduate off the senior team, moving somebody up from that junior team to fill that role, and then filling the second team's position. So students always have like multiple years of experience before they make what I would call my senior or my top team.
No need to tell us your secret sauce here. Sooner or later, we'll all figure it out.
Our club is a lot smaller. I think we have like around 15 to 20 regular members. And then not all of them are interested in going on competitions. So usually it's more of a challenge of, trying to secure a team. We almost had 2 teams this past year, but, just trying to convince, basically, if there's students that maybe they're not, they're not into cybersecurity, but they're into system administration, or we have some that are just like, we've got a team member who I'm like, you would be great at anomalies. Would you be willing to come with us? So we kind of do some recruiting outside of the team to fill in some spots. With such a small number of students, it's if you're interested, then that's the main skill that I want. A student that is excited about it, willing to put in some time, because it does, take a little bit of time extra from their classes, and just willing to learn and kind of dedicate, the 3 weeks or whatever. We've said before that if students aren't willing to put in that kind of time, then maybe CyberForce isn't for them. Maybe, we'll find some other cyber competition where there isn't as much prep time. But yeah, most of our recruiting is, getting out there, finding people that just have the desire to learn, and then from there, building a team with them.
It's funny you mention the will and desire for the prep for the CyberForce, because again, in our unique setup, we do have 2 to 3 weeks of prep in there with some pre-competition things for people to do and turn in. And that was one of the things that the students that we talked to last episode was that they did mention. They said, like if you want to be in CyberForce, make sure you do it like wholeheartedly. Don't go in with it like kind of half in, half out. Get the whole experience and like ensure that you know the timelines, which are typically out there for everyone when registration goes out, and like get your class stuff done so that you can dedicate your time to those weeks. And if you really don't think you can, like don't I guess like handicap your team on the fact of like once you're in, then like, by the way, I can't do this anymore. We know school kind of changes sometimes, but I just like that you also mentioned the same thing for it. So then I have to ask, because I also think we have some mentors that do, well, I think every mentor does something slightly different for their teams. Some are their team's biggest cheerleaders, and that's their role for their teams. And then there's others that do a lot more hands-on training, helping ahead of time, like going through anomalies of prior things, giving them CTFs like crazy. I'm wondering, what does mentorship look like for you, with your team, or just in general?
I'd say there's definitely a cheerleader component to it. It's especially as we get closer to competition or on competition day, trying to keep their, like, hey, we've been working hard. You just got a little bit left to go. We have some usually pretty high turnover with our CyberForce teams, and so usually there is a lot of like, maybe like the first week of forming the team of being like, here's some things you should go over and review. Here's what some anomalies from last year looked like, practice some of those. Yeah. And then a lot of, just pointing them into the right resources. So when the actual competition environment comes out, just being like, okay, you're working with this kind of a service. Here's a nice web page that you can go to kind of read more about it. And then obviously, buying food for them and driving the van is probably the most important role, to be honest. Everything else is, a good team captain could take care of most of what I do. And like with this past couple of years, we've had really great captains, but the university will not let them drive the van. And I don't expect them to buy pizza. So that's my important role.
That's an important role.
I don't think you should ever downplay.
It's a key role.
I was gonna say, don't ever downplay the driving, the pizza buying, but also I wasn't trying to downplay the cheerleading role, because honestly, whether teams are in first place or in the bottom, like I think it's still like it is a long day. And so I think like keeping people like pepped up and like, come on, we could just not, again, I don't think a lot of people realize in college, like 8 hours is a long day sometimes. And they put in 3 weeks solid to like have 8 hours come and go. And they're like, okay, like what just happened? So a cheerleader is needed by everyone on that day for sure.
I would definitely say it's much more the cheerleader role for myself as well. Usually what I end up doing is picking the roster. I can certainly point to people to the right resources, but I'm not the expert on anything that you guys do in CyberForce. So I leave that up to the team captain. I name a team captain. Of course, I'm fortunate enough to know who that is and kind of their skill set, and know that they either can or can't do certain areas. And if, let's say, they just have no Linux server experience at all, I'm going to bring someone else in to help train and coach the team on that as well. So I'd say my biggest role is not only as cheerleader, it's also kind of fighting through all the bureaucracy at a huge university. So students get the practice space that they need. And you mentioned the long day. That's right. Students that are on my team are almost always full-time students. A lot of them have part-time jobs during the school year as well. So due to class scheduling, the only time we can get some of the labs to practice in is after 7:15 in the evening. And some people still have night classes later, but that's the earliest we can kind of get those spaces. So they'll be here till like and I'm there too till like 11:15 at night for several days, and then they go home and work on things independently, come back the next night and put things together for, let's say, some of the documentation for CyberForce. It kind of gets divided out to who feels they could do a good job at it. They come in with a draft, and then they work the next day or two in the evening on it together before putting the document together to send in to CyberForce. And I usually try to get them to encourage them to turn it in. I'd like to get it in a day before, but it's usually the day of. But get it in early and then just go home and sleep, because there's like 1 or 2 days before they have to get on a plane very early in the morning to get up to Chicago. So I do want them well rested before we get up there. But again, my role, predominantly cheerleader for them, supporting them, and working through all the bureaucratic tape that we have to cut through here. I also do all the travel planning, from hotels, airfares, rental cars or vans, and all the expense reporting on that. So the students really focus on what they have to do in the competition. And I kind of leave that up to them to do. I just take all the barriers away.
Well, I think that's the important portion of it, I guess. And I think you take on, you and Andy both take on the important roles of all the other stuff, which is, the bureaucratic stuff that they'll have to take on sooner or later once they get, the full-time job of having to do the red tape, I guess.
Well, I'm gonna say it's hard for a faculty member to get through some of that. And it's almost virtually impossible for a student to do it on their own. Yeah. So I think that's where I can lend the most value to, because I will keep after someone until they, an administrator or another faculty member, until they take care of my request.
That's very true. We get that as full-timers here. So we only see most of these students in person one time a year. You guys see them much more frequently than we do, whether that's virtually, in person, or whatever. But from what you've seen, whether it's in their skills, confidence, or even how they approach problems, we've seen just even yearly how they exponentially grow from being in the CyberForce competition or the program overall. How do you feel the students are part of the competition, how they grow in, how you see them in their daily schooling? So
with CyberForce or any of the competitions, once we have a team roster and they start practicing, it's watching the interpersonal dynamics of the team develop to see who's communicating with who. And I've been really fortunate. It's pretty much worked out really well with the personalities and full division of no one wants to be the slacker on any of the teams, because they know they'll get called out and they know they'll never do another competition if they do. So everybody really puts forward, their best effort to turn in their best work. The other thing is, going to competitions, students get an experience from that live competition that we can never duplicate in a classroom. They're on their own with the knowledge that they've learned in their classes, and now they're put into a real life situation, and it's not like just recalling an answer and spitting it down on a test. They have to go through all their knowledge, what they know how to do, what they don't know how to do, and maybe rely on someone else on the team that knows more about a certain area, and figure out the problem live. And the quicker they do that, the more points they get, or the faster they can go through their tasks in the competition.
Yeah, I think, like Tom said, I think it's a great chance that it's hard for us to mimic in a classroom. So it gives them a chance to take what they've learned and actually apply it, expose their weaknesses, so then they know, last year on the drive home, we were talking about, here are some things we could do to get better. And highlight, and the things they're good at too. So they're like, hey, I really did really well with, this part of this setup or these anomalies. So just maybe like a self-inventory, which then they can use to improve. I also think that it's made them more curious. So most of our students that we don't actually have a cybersecurity class until usually their senior year. And so most of the time, they go there and maybe they don't do as well as they think they were going to. But it shows them hey, the things that we're learning in club meetings and in class are important. Gives them more motivation to keep working at it. And like I said too, like the approval, like, yes, what I've learned has been helpful, and I'm motivated to go out and learn more and fill in the gaps that I have. And a little bit more maybe trust in the curriculum to deliver that to them before they graduate.
Thank you both for taking the time to be with us today. I wanted to take a moment for us to recap some of the key points from our discussion today. One of the key points that I really found that was fascinating that you guys brought up was, regarding the funding. I really liked how Tom and Andy both found their funding from two different sources. I like the idea how Andy focused, internally at the school, and that was a really, really good strategy on his point to look at what other clubs are doing and trying to learn from them to see where are they getting their funding, to see if there was a venue for him to collaborate with them and find out if there was a route for them. Where Tom, you would think, since it's a cyber competition, you would think that Tom would focus on his external funding. You'd think he'd focus on like the tech companies. But the fact that he's even bringing up that he looked at a law firm, that he looked at energy, I thought that was a really good point that they brought up. And I think it's really useful points for any mentors or future students, because, we know that there's teams out there that don't have mentors. So that's even important points for them to see how they themselves can help their team get funding.
I thought it was a pretty interesting, mind-boggling moment when Tom also mentioned that he works with the Alumni Association, which is something I guess I hadn't initially thought about for schools, that, if you have a pretty large presence of alumni that have come through either that particular program, why not reach out to them and their organizations to see if they would be interested in supporting, your club and whatnot.
And it kind of reminds you to, think outside the box and think of unique approaches to funding. So they both talked about, looking up conferences that are local and see who sponsors that conference or see who sponsors other local organizations. So kind of, speaking towards their barriers and thinking how they can look outside that box of limiting themselves and their funding, which kind of rolls into another key takeaway when we talked about what mentorship looked like to them. And both of them had mentioned that, they were kind of in that cheerleader role or in that role of removing barriers for the students. So the students didn't have to worry about the logistics of how they were going to get to the competition or, where that funding was going to come from. When they're speaking of their roles, they're kind of that middleman between either the school and the university and the students, or, those outside barriers that they face, even just getting to the competition. So just like, any other sports team or competition, your coach can get you there, but they don't participate on the day of, but they do everything in their power to get you there and be well prepared when you arrive and compete.
It only makes me look at I wonder how the teams that don't have a mentor. I mean, I wonder how that affects, not having that. I know a lot of teams bring a captain, so I wonder, does the captain kind of step in and take that role? But he's participating now, so that's got to be such a different dynamic for teams that don't have that capability to bring a mentor with them.
I also worry if that is a barrier to entry for some schools in general, when they don't have an active mentor that can help cut that bureaucratic tape at a university, or they don't at all know where to start. When you have someone like Andy and Tom, who both had to kind of figure it out the first year or two, and you have a student doing that for, their club or just the team, that seems like a lot of uplift on top of their schoolwork. So it's great to have a mentor in it, whether that's a teacher or, someone who's, a PhD student, someone who's got a bit more of an idea of what to expect at the school.
Well, as we close out the second episode of Securing the Spark, a huge thank you again to Tom and Andy for joining us and sharing their incredible insights and experiences as mentors for the CyberForce competition and the program as a whole. For those tuning in, if this episode has sparked your interest in participating or in supporting the CyberForce program, Visit cyberforce.energy.gov to learn more. Be sure to follow our podcast channel, Securing the Spark, to be updated when new episodes are posted. Until next time.